So, talk a little bit about growing your own food, the philosophy around it, in a system where you have access to stuff now versus when you have no access. So, the stuff I try to grow, most of what I grow are the things that are more expensive in the store. So, you know, those things that are going to take more money for me to purchase. And the stuff I don't grow are things that are going to be cheap. So, I do grow some onions and stuff like that, but those are more of my like prepping onions, and it's a seed stock that I'm continuing. So I've got these bunching onions that I grow year over year. They're on their like fourth year, and we barely use them. I um, dry them out, let them sit, replant them the next year, and it's more of a in the future if they're not available. But like onions, cheap. Potatoes, cheap. Great story about potatoes, though. I have a history book. Most of my family's from Sweden. Came across and settled in Minnesota and North Dakota, and there was a story in the book about a couple of relatives of mine, whatever they are, seventh cousins, whatever. But it was about the fact that they went and fought in the war in Prussia and brought back some of the first potatoes back to Sweden. And when they grew them, they used to boil them and then spread them on bread like butter. And that always puzzled me like my whole life. And when I started getting into preparedness, 2009, 2010, I did some grow bags and we grew potatoes in them. And it wasn't until we cooked those homegrown potatoes that I saw the difference in the texture. Like it was ridiculous. Like you could have spread them like a spread, like butter on bread. And so, quality, is another thing that, you could look at. But, grow the things that are going to start saving you money, right? Because then you can take that money and buy other things that you need to prep with. Now, why we can, right? Why things are available. Stores are still open. They're not empty. Now the ball game changes once grocery stores are empty and the event happens, and you have to figure out how you're going to eat and survive. I would say the majority of what you're growing are going to be protein based stuff. So lots and lots of beans or bean type stuff. Prepper tip: if you have a grocery store who sells beans, organic beans, right, that you can put in a bag, 2-3 pounds, whatever you want to get, guess what? They'll grow. So instead of spending, $30, $40 on the internet buying this big bean package or whatever it is, go to that organic store that sells this stuff. Buy 4, 5, 6, 8, 10, 20, whatever pounds, portion it, and put it in your freezer to save them for when you need. So it doesn't have to be from, patriotseed.com or, survival garden this. There are other ways that you can figure out getting what you need to be able to, provide for your family. Protein is going to be the biggest problem. There's not going to be animals available. If you're lucky to have chickens, you've got that. But like the protein is the thing that's going to kill people. And so stock up on that. But you got to practice now. You got to be growing now. We had an end of the season quote unquote party and there's only a few families that showed up. But one of the guys who's the coach, they just recently bought 15 acres and put their house on it, and he hasn't done a whole lot with it. I don't think he's actually a prepper. I think they bought it to buy it. But one of the things I talked to him about was, what are you going to do with this land? Like, you need to figure out, are you going to grow, are you going to have animals? Are you going to grow, food? What's your niche? And that goes back to the concept that I've talked about with, how I'm going to rally up a community is each person is going to have one thing that they do. Like, you're going to grow corn. You are going to grow potatoes. You are going to grow this, peppers. You're going to grow okra. You're going to grow, but you're going to get one thing because it's simple. And then we're going to bring it together and portion it back out. Simplicity. God wants us to be simple. I mean, he says it. Take my yoke. My yoke is easy. But we don't. We choose to take the hard way so many times. So many times. And we've got to learn. And we don't learn because we're stupid and we're stubborn and we have free will. But please start growing your own stuff. I've said it time and time again. I will gladly send seeds that I reharvest out of my garden to anybody. And so I've already done it multiple times to people who've asked. Start growing your own stuff. And it doesn't have to be a garden plot. If you're working with minimum square footage, vertical. Grow vertical. You can't do horizontal. You don't have the yardage. Vertical. Grow stuff up. You can grow every one of these plants up. So, email me. I'll put email in the description eventually. I'm trying to get to that just so you guys have a way to contact me besides just putting a note down, which I might not see, or a comment down. And I'll get that written up. So I got a standard thing I can slap in there. But one of the things I was telling that guy was, think about it realistically. You have about 45 years to perfect growing your own food. A little bit more maybe down here because you got fall and spring, but you have 45 times to figure it out and get it right. Do you really want the time that you have to figure it out and get it right to be when the event happens? Like, I don't. That's why even when I was in the military, we were going from base to base. I built a garden every place we went, and we grew something. And it was before I even had the concept of being a prepper. It was more about growing our own food. So, something to think about. Man, I want you guys to be trying. You got to be doing. You got to be acting. We talked about acting before. God wants us to act. We can't just sit there and wait for the phone call of something that's going to save our butts. We got to act. He wants us to act. He puts stuff in front of us so we can act. It's whether or not we listen and see and go ahead and do. So, do, guys. Act.